In the early hours of September 2, 1666, a small fire in a bakery sparked one of the most devastating tragedies in London's history. It was a quiet night, and the inhabitants of Pudding Lane, a narrow, crowded street of wooden houses, slept oblivious to the spark that would change their lives forever. Thomas Farriner's bakery, located on that street, was like any other of the time. But that night, a poorly extinguished fire in his oven ignited the dry roof beams. Within minutes, the flames spread to nearby houses, which were built mostly of wood and covered with pitch, a highly flammable material. London, which had endured the plague only a year earlier, now found itself facing a more voracious enemy, fire. At first, neighbors tried to douse the flames with buckets of water drawn from the River Thames, but the situation soon spiraled out of control. The wind, strong and relentless, was blowing from the east, carrying the burning embers through the streets. The buildings, huddled side by side, burned like torches. The Mayor of London, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, was quickly alerted. However, upon arriving on the scene, he underestimated the severity of the fire and commented, "A woman could put it out with a bucket of water." But by dawn, the scale of the disaster was undeniable. The flames had crossed the Thames and were beginning to consume markets, churches and homes. Fear grew as the bells of St. Magnus Church began to ring alone, presaging the collapse of its tower. The fire was not only devouring buildings, it was also sweeping away the hope and stability of the city. The streets were filled with screams, the cries of separated families and the thunder of collapsing roofs. The only effective solution to stop the fire was to create firebreaks, knocking down houses to prevent the flames from advancing. However, property owners, fearful of losing everything, resisted having their homes destroyed. This delayed key decisions until it was too late. King Charles II, alarmed by the speed of the disaster, took action. He ordered soldiers to begin tearing down buildings without permission, promising to compensate the owners later. Even he himself joined the effort, overseeing the creation of firebreaks and encouraging the population to fight the fire. But the wind continued to fan the flames, and within 48 hours, the fire had reached St. Paul's Cathedral, a symbol of the city. The cathedral, which was under restoration and surrounded by wooden scaffolding, was consumed by flames in a terrifying scene. People watched from a distance as lead from the roof melted and ran through the streets like rivers of fire. Finally, the wind changed direction on September 5, and the flames began to die down. Although small pockets continued to burn for days, the bulk of the fire was over. However, the damage was incalculable. More than 13,000 homes, 87 churches and most government buildings were gone. Approximately 100,000 people were left homeless, wandering the streets in search of shelter. Miraculously, the number of recorded deaths was low, but many believe that the poorest or destitute victims were not counted. After the tragedy, London faced the monumental challenge of rebuilding itself. Architect Sir Christopher Wren designed a new plan for the city, with wider streets and buildings made of brick instead of wood. The new St. Paul's Cathedral, which became one of England's most iconic structures, was part of this renaissance. In memory of the fire, the Great Fire of London Memorial was erected near the site where it began. Today, it remains a reminder of how a spark can transform a city's history. The Great Fire of London left not only ashes and ruins, but also a lesson, even in times of greatest destruction, there is room for rebirth. London rose from its own ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever. But the flames of that night continue to burn in our memory, as a reminder of the uncontrollable power of nature and the fragility of our human constructs.